All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Izaiah Tackles Ethics, where today we're going to be talking about some differences between moral relativism and moral objectivism. And now this time it's going to be a little bit more official. I have something to go off of instead of just kind of like free-flowing thoughts. And I actually did some research beforehand instead of just talking about what I thought was just with the trolley problem, right? Now, I think it's good to actually define our terms before we get into the discussion of like how they compare and contrast with each other, right? Now, moral relativism is a set of ideas that thinks that morals are not just a set of objective standards that apply universally, but are a series of ideas molded by both the individual themselves and the culture surrounding that individual, right? Now, moral objectivism is the idea that there is actually a universally applicable set of morals that sets your ethical standards, right? And that an individual's perspective has no holding on those standards, right? So a moral objectivist would say something like murder is wrong. Like there's just a universal rule that murder is always wrong. But one objection to that is the relativist perspective can say that if they grew up in a culture that believed that murder was something that was morally permissible, then they would also believe that murder was morally permissible. That would change the way that they saw ethics. Right. And I think that objection is one that's really hard to tackle because you can't understand the perspective of someone not born in your society because you were born in your society. And I think it's really hard to get that perspective because most of the time both parties were raised in the same society that believes that, just for example, something like murder is wrong, right? And even I think that you can have your moral standards shifted by something that's not even a complete societal change, but even just for families, like between like different growing up in different families. Right. And the example that I'm going to use to express this point is with homosexuality, right? And like I think you can just see that if one person was raised in a family that taught them that homosexuality was something that was immoral, even though I honestly don't think that homosexuality is something that fits in the moral sphere. And Alex O'Connor made a great video about that. I'll link it in the description. But even that, you could like have your moral perspective shifted by how you were raised by your family and how you were taught. And then another person born and raised in a different family would have a completely different perspective, right? And I think that just shows like you don't even have to have a complete societal change to be able to like have your morals shifted. It can be something as small as a family or like as a family member is talking to you, or something like maybe you meet a friend and they share their ideas of morals and that shifts yours, right? That's why I personally think that moral objectivism is kind of a hard stance to take. Now, it's easy to take the stance of moral objectivism from a theistic standpoint, right? Because if you believe in like a higher order or like a higher creator, right? It kind of follows that that creator would instill some sort of like standard set of morality in its creations, right? So that moral objectivism is very hard to tackle from a naturalistic or an atheistic perspective. You kind of need to have some sort of higher order in order to be able to believe that there is actually that sort of set of standards, right? So it's very tricky to tackle objectivism from that atheistic perspective. Now I'm going to give my take. I think that the idea of relativism versus objectivism is I think that it's a really hard concept to tackle because if like I would consider myself agnostic probably, right? So I don't know. Like if there was a God out there, right? Then I would believe that there was a objective set of morality, like objective standards for morality. But on the other hand, I just can't find myself rationalizing objective morality without the use of a higher power. So I'm would consider myself on the fence. I think that morality has a lot to do with culture. I think that's why I lean more towards relativism, right? Because I think that there's a lot of things and a lot of concepts that we don't really think about day to day that are actually shifted by how we were raised and the culture that we live in, right? So it's a tough question to tackle, and I'm not fully one way or fully the other. And I think that as I develop, I think I'll know more, and if I ever end up taking a like final stance, I will probably um I might make an update video or something if I finally finish leaning one way towards the other. I think that there's pros and cons to both, and I think that there's no there is a right and a wrong answer, but you have no way of knowing, right? So there isn't actually a right and a wrong. Um, that was just kind of a brief rundown of relativism versus objectivism. I've been Isaiah. This has been Isaiah Tackles Ethics. Thank you for watching. Moral relativism is the idea that morals are not a set of whoa. Why did I say hard to tackle like 15 times? I don't know if I should re-record that.